was working on a video on the first and second era of Hammerfell when I was reminded of the Sword Saints. The video I was working on would do them a little justice on its own, so I decided they deserve to be covered separately. Sword Singers. They are a legendary group of swordsmen hailing from Yakuda, a small continent surrounded by multiple islands in the ancestral home of the Red Guards. Sword singers, like the Yakudan people, were once poets, mystics, artists, and scholars in search of enlightenment. But constant civil war led them to find enlightenment in the way of the sword. Luckily, this also allowed for other philosophies to survive through the ages. Sword singers would use swords almost exclusively, believing it to be the greatest of weapons. Sword singers further honed their craft in combat and forging beautiful blades augmented with magic in the Hall of Virtue, temples they built to the gods of war. Take heart, O illustrators, majesty, for your people are Redguard, which means they come easily to the way of the sword, and once they have their hands once again on the hilts of a blade and learn to quote once more from the Book of Circles, they will be a match for any folk all around the world. That's a quote. One of many proclaiming Red Guards as great warriors. Sword singers even more so. I say this to put into perspective the greatest of these sword saints and how mighty they are. The Ansi, the saints of the sword. These elite warriors through sheer will manifest the shakkai, the spirit sword. Many fail to do this. Some can form a sword at a young age, natural warriors. All those that can manifest the shakkai are thought to be truly special and gifted warriors. Ansi were said to be virtuous, traveling the world to right wrongs and end conflict. The shakkai itself, to some, would just be a shapely light, but to the trained, it would be in the form of a sword, a bright, unstoppable weapon of great might. Some may have even been curved. And there were great feats performed by users of the shakkai, which may have led to the idea that sword singers are just as magically inclined as they are warriors. Now, while there were few singers in the later eras, there are still legendary figures throughout history that used the shakkai, such as al-Saran, Red Guard Swordmaster and leader of the Dragon Guard, a group of legendary dragon hunters who follow the Dragonborn, and is a member of the Five Companions. He faced many great enemies, beasts, Daedra, and of course, dragons, along his journey to becoming a sword saint. The living god Vivek, wanting to know more about sword saints, would learn the basics from a warrior named Cyrus in what would be known as the meeting of the swords. The finger's knife severs 5, protecting your cardinal points. In your central theory, 5 thrusts spaced milliseconds apart, like tapping the desk aboard, waiting for morning bread. We are Ansu, the greatest warriors that live in men. Our swords sent the left-handers into the oceans, whose empire was 4 times the size of the White King. When we fight, our swords can kill the laws of nature itself. Yakuda is, as you see, is because our swords can cut atoms, the uncuttable. Vivek seemed to believe every word and was very impressed. Cyrus would also come into conflict with the legendary Tiber Septim, where on a mission he killed an ally of Cyrus, leading to a verbal and physical battle with the Emperor. This would end with Tiber Septim admitting defeat as he viewed his actions as weak. On another mission, Cyrus would find himself captured by the god of talk, Gudak, before eventually defeating him. Something to note that the left-handed ones that Cyrus referred to were likely a clan of elves. I should probably note that I know that there are already Black Jedi. I thought that would just be a cool thumbnail. Also, another note, you don't have to be a red guard to be a sword singer. Perhaps the most renowned Asani in history, Frandar Hunding, a legendary hero, a man that grew up in a time of constant civil war. During his time, he engaged in over 90 duels, winning them all, including against an evil lord by the name of Janik and his 7 lynches. Proving himself to be the greatest, he wrote about his philosophy of the sword, known as the Book of Circles. He would fight in many wars, winning them all before retiring again. He would fight again in the War of the Singers against the last known Yakudan emperor, Hira, who with an army of orcs sought the death of the Asani. Outnumbered 30 to 1, Frandar would lead his people to victory, though not without great casualty. The war, in the end, was won. Frandar would meet his end against the War of the Goblins, and his people would leave for a new land known as Hammerfell. Thanking forever Frandar for defeating the Empire, his warrior philosophy, and fighting the goblins, which if not for that, would have led to the death of his people. You can see these actions play out in spirit form as a reminder that the Asani can maintain their consciousness as a ghost to guide and look after their people, even in death. The Celestial Warrior, a mortal with the power of the stars, one of the 3 warriors who are destined to stop the Celestial Serpent from destroying all of time. In battle, he used the shakkai sword and caused a large shockwave. He also used the power of the shakkai to travel through time, showing another great ability of shakkai warriors. And finally, my personal favorite shakkai user, Rada al-Saran, a red guard whose skills were so exceptional in the ways of a sword saint. His fame and notoriety grew so great he thought he could challenge the gods, and he would get his chance. Shakkai, the goddess of aberrant swordsmanship, who taught the ways of the swords to mortals, herself took form, wielding a blade made of the strongest of material, and challenged Rada on the beach, eager to humble the mortal man. Rada would bow to the entity, and when it bowed back, he knew he finally had a worthy adversary. They fought for 3 days with no sign of victory. Finally getting annoyed, Rada went for one powerful swing, breaking the god's weapon, creating a storm that split the ocean. When everything cleared, the battle ended as a draw. Rada, however, took it as he failed and would find himself with a Daedric lord. If you want to know more about Rada and his story, it will appear at the end of this video. Personally, I believe to break the god's weapon and cause a storm, Rada may have used one of the forbidden techniques of the sword saints. One in particular is said to be truly devastating. The Pancratus sword, a technique capable of destroying everything, men, gods, and even reality itself, a power that destroys atoms, causing a nuke-like destruction that was said to sink Yakuda itself. When Cyrus would meet the living god Vivek again in a battle of the swords, he threatened to use the Pancratus. Reading his mind, Vivek surrendered. There are more stories and feats of the sword saints, fighting in wars, manipulating oblivion, but I will stop there. If you want more, like and sub, because I will cover the history of Hammerfell soon. History like the War of the Sword Saints and the battle against the goblins, as well as the overall power scaling stuff. But if you really want to see more sword singers, and maybe even more Rada, we can hope that the next Elder Scrolls games takes place in Hammerfell. In the current era of Elder Scrolls, Sword Saints are but a legend in the eyes of the Redguard, but something tells me the legend can live again if we return to Hammerfell. I guess we shall see. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please remember to like, sub, and hit the bell. Later.